Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the teams. We talked about the players, but how they function within their teams and how the teams are in terms of strength is, of course, very different. I think it's important to highlight that this is our first kind of double elimination real tournament with Fearless in my mind, because I think first stand was very goofy. We had very strange formats globally. We had very terrible formats in North America, BO1 formats in, of course, Europe. But that went into best of threes and so forth. LPL had a BO5 only format, so that was pretty legit. And then we had the LCK with a very, very bad format where T1 and How Life had to, one of them had to get out, and KT and Nongshim got to make it further, you know. So that was pretty strange. I think we live in an era where we have moved past the point where teams have reached a synergy and a collective skill. Those ceilings will not be breached, in my opinion. The reason I say so is because Fearless, we are back in a state where the skill of the individual is more pronounced and more important than ever. Meaning, years of the past, like the synergy of, for example, T1 at previous World Championships, or a JDG 2023, or even, Gen G of the previous year, or previous Bilibilis, they were specialists at a certain type of a game, and they were so damn good at it, and they lived in a world where they could enforce that in every single game, right? But now you need to be the master of so many different things due to Fearless being able to branch out in many directions. If we take a look at JDG, they were scaling team fighters with facilitating mids and tank tops, right? That was JDG 2023. That's what they did the entire year until they reached, of course, the semifinals where they got beaten by T1, who had the range support meta. And then you had T1, who played at such a masterful level in back-to-back-to-back World Championships, 3 World Championships, where they mastered the style of a support being roam heavy and, of course, allowing your jungle to farm super much, and the carry top style, and Gumayushi being a facilitating AD, meaning the type of player that always played for winning lanes to enable carrier. And Faker being kind of the wild card, the person who required no resources and found ways to be effective. But we have moved past that. Maybe in the future we're going to find that level of precision, but I doubt it due to the nature of Fearless. You need to be able to play poke, you need to be able to play disengage, you need to be able to carry junglers, you need to be play facilitating junglers, you need to be able to play Galio mid, Silas mid, Ari mid, Orianna mid, Azir mid, Talia mid. The range of play right now is extremely massive, so it's very clear when the individual players stand out. And we kind of have returned to a world where having really, really insane individual players is inherently really, really OP. And I think that's where we start. Gen G, I think anyone that doesn't put Gen G as the #1 team coming into this tournament is dishonest or is trying to be cheeky. Gen G currently, in my opinion, have the 2 best players in the world in Canyon and Chovy, and I think the range of play that they have is self-evident. I think that they can find clutch wins, clutch team fights, and they have insane lane phases. Chovy, obviously, when I'm talking about lane phase. And then they have an insane range of effective champions played. So everyone's heard all the good things about Gen G. Keen being a massive stabilizing force. Duro, of course, improving massively in this spring split. Ruler being Ruler, even though his split hasn't been that impressive. Borderline bad by his own standards. The main things you can target Gen G for, if anything, is, I think, in regards to how they draft and how they have consistency in their setups in the game, that is where there is some danger. I would never put Gen G's team play above anyone's Legends team play. Gen G don't have the best team play in the world. I think simply they have 2 solo laners that are borderline unkillable when it comes to side, and they are really, really insane at making sure that they are safe with rather limited information. They have a jungler that understands how to carry and also how to play the team fights. I don't know how many times Canyon stole Drakes, clutched out fights throughout the whole season. And I think that as things go deeper into a best of 5, I do think that Canyon and Chovy have a really, really, really good grasp of which way the wind is blowing. Meaning they understand which direction they need to head in terms of course, what they should pick on an individual level. I think you saw that in the Hanwha Life reverse sweep. I do think if you want to target Gen G, I think their drafts are a little bit inconsistent. I think that very solidified team play. I can give you guys examples. For example, this. Hello, Kitty. This is for later. We take a look at Gen G versus T1, all right? Gen G versus T1, take a look at that game 1. This was a series where I think this is, on the T1 side, I do think this was our first initial signs of T1 actually getting a lot better, right? This was the first initial signs of T1 getting a lot better. But I wanted to highlight that even in this game, even though it's only one sample size, I think it's a good way of making my point. They actually were in losing positions at certain times, and T1 actually stacked dragons. Then eventually, Gen G actually got caught out in a couple of fights. I think it was leading into Drake number 4, where they were in a dangerous spot. And then I think, let me just take a look at that fight that happened. I think it was moving into Drake 4. Moving into this game state, right? I think, considering position, T1 is already in river, cleared everything. They are first. They are forcing the composition with Jace to face check. They don't have the strongest duos. Varus and Renata are going to pop up completely because the enemy is face checking into you. There's a lot of details here that point to the fact that T1 should be winning. If Gen G were in T1's position in terms of this Drake setup, I would say that Gen G would win on that side too. It's a kind of a double-edged sword that I'm trying to present in the fact that I think that Gen G are so damn talented that they get away with certain things they shouldn't be getting away with. And the snap here from Canyon, it worked for what it was, right? But the whole setup leading up to this is very losing. And Gen G think to themselves, oh, we can probably win this anyway. We need to contest the soul. And I think this was one of those games where T1, in my opinion, should have actually won, right? It's like they are leaning into Nash to get soul, they have Nash and soul. And by some strange fucking miracle, they managed to, lose this game. So let me show you now the Elder Dragon that T1 kind of screwed up. Because when I'm going to be talking about T1, this is also an important one because I do think that T1 was close to being good for a very long time because this was, of course, in the middle of the season. This is just a moment where Doran kind of just screws up. Like Doran just walks on a bot wave that doesn't matter, which allows Gen G to face check completely, and T1 are not contesting on the banana bush. So as the enemy enters freely because San is showing on bot, they don't have, people in position here to actually hit. And I think here you should have, potentially pulled out the Drake, but you should have contested this, and you should have never, ever heard, Doran should have never showed bot. And then in the end, this is a regular season game, but this is a small detail that made Gen G winning. And I think there were many games throughout the season where Gen G is flying very, very close to the sun. And I think the same can be said about game number 2. Let me just show you guys game number 2 as well in this series. I don't think that Blue Side draft is the greatest, right? Certain elements of this is kind of outdated, but the enemy being a very, very bulky front line, I think that in the end, this is a game that is completely winnable. Looking at the game states that happen later on, I do think there were opportunities even in this one for T1 to potentially, do something. Not at the same level as game 1, so maybe I'm convoluting my point, but it was the Nash start that ended up in a Canyon steal. And I think here, honestly, looking back at this, right, I think this was during the phase where T1 didn't have that same level of unity, same level of trust in one another, which this is, of course, something that they worked on and clearly showcased in the playoff run. But here, T1 owner just gets abandoned for some reason. Like, everyone just sells him on eBay and stop hitting, when in reality, they should be playing this, I think, because they are running away from Ornn, but they have Brom E. They are selling owner on eBay here for a very cheap price, and Canyon just sniped him and resold him, you know, for the price of a Nash. Yeah. But even in this case, right, I think if T1 played this circumstance better, I think once again the aloofness of Gen G is the beauty of their gameplay, but it's also a double-edged sword. I think that Gen G's series going to 5. And in terms of their prep work, if I just highlight, you know, looking back at their series against Hanwha Life, I think their prep work was some of the most disrespectful I've ever seen. Because in regards to preparing against Hanwha Life, we had the situation where the enemy team, they set up the Poppy, okay, they sent the jungle. This was standard stuff, but then again, like first pick Trundle, everyone knows is a goddamn meme, right? First pick Trundle, enemy went Kalista Renata. This is probably like Vipers and Delight's like best bot lane matchup that they can play. And then coming into the third game, even here, I find it disrespectful. They line up the enemy for a Sejuani Silas angle and then follow that up with opening up Yone. And sure, they beat those things because they are so damn good. But I do think that you should chip away at your enemy by cutting their preparationary work in half too, right? And in terms of Gen G, from what I expect from the coaching staff in terms of strategy, I do think that Gen G have a certain weakness there. But on the individual level, they are going to be better than everybody, I think, at this event. And I think this is an event where it's going to be super, super impactful. But I still wanted to highlight some potential weaknesses in my mind where Gen G is going to be disrespectful in their prep work. I think that in regards to their bot lane phase, I think T1 is a bot lane that can find opportunities. I think even Elk and On and Duro and and Kael and Hope, these are very strong lanes that could find potential angles and opportunities to also get an edge over the bot lane. But other than that, I think Gen G's topside in Canyon, Keen, and Chovy, I think are the best topside in League of Legends history. This is the best topside in League of Legends history. Most of the time, if you guys think about pairings, they don't come in threes. You could tell me Showmaker, Nuguri, Canyon. I can play ball with that. Definitely I can play ball with that. I don't mind that at all. That doesn't make me angry. Right? That doesn't make me angry. But beyond that, most pairings are in twos. Whether it's Deshai and, you know, Rookie. And then there's like, you know, the jungler was Ning. You know? You have Tian, Doinbi, and then their top laner was Gimgoon. You know, there's always a little bit of a problem. It's like you have Bengi and Faker and Marin. Oh, yeah, that's playable. 2015, I can have that conversation. But Gen G, you know, Chovy, Canyon, and Keen doing it in the modern era is something else. All right. Enough about Gen G. The next team in line, I agree with the most sentiment of people. I think the main thing for me is what I highlighted when I talked about Gen G2. I think T1's ramp up was something that was sprinkled throughout. And I do think that this meta coming into this in particular, I do think that Gumayushi is lined up together with Carrier to have a meta where they can highlight the best of themselves. Absolutely the best of themselves. Keep in mind, coming into this event, Nico is nerfed, which means that Kaiser is going to be less played. You had Senna got nerfed, which might hurt, but then again, they didn't play it super much. It was just something that got banned against them in games where it could potentially be good. Lucian, Varus, Jhin, Kaelin, you know, everything ready to go. Zeri seems a little bit strong, but I don't think it's going to be overwhelming. Then again, it's like Fearless, one game, who cares? Kaiser, Ezreal, Zeri, these are the champions that we don't see Gumyushi on, and I don't think they are super, super relevant. Kalista got nerfed, but I do think Kalista still probably will be played. I think, considering as BO5s, I think that Kalista will be played. I think it will happen. But I do think that T1's bot lane is the best one at this event. And I think that's what makes them the most dangerous. I think Owner has been incredibly good. I think that they have worked a lot on their support and jungle synergy, which is a big deal. I think that Faker in playoffs began to find what he is supposed to play to be effective, which I think is a super important thing. Whether it's Galio, Annie, something else, right? These type of setups with Ryze, Ari. This is the Faker that I like. I think Doran, I don't know how much his form will continue, because I do think in terms of the ramp up, Doran had a fantastic playoffs. I think that he was the MVP of the whole playoffs. But looking at the regular split, there were some moments that were goddamn awful. And maybe those were just the worst moments of T1, and there were a lot of things at play there. And Doran seems to be big on the comfort thing. But you know, Doran is probably like the mystery here coming into this event. If Doran can play as good as he did in the playoffs against Perfect and Zeus, bro, he's going to be a big blessing here, because he's capable of playing the weak side game super good. That's we knew that about him. But if he has a Mina, Mbessa, and a Gwen, and he has some synergy built in together with Faker and Owner, and he can actually, you know, leverage leads into something, that's a big plus. But historically, this was never Doran's biggest strength. He was never a player that overwhelmed games when he had big leads. But in that playoff segment, he actually did. But then the other question is, how much do we judge how Life's downfall in terms of how they played, you know, in regards to, of course, them getting reverse swept and then being considerably worse, right? I think both can be true. T1 played super well, and also How Alive played pretty bad for their standard. I think both is very, very true. The main thing here, right, is just that T1 as well, they carry so much more experience. I think if you just look strictly at gameplay, no nameplates, no intangibles, they're all robots, nothing. I think anyone's legend, I think there is an argument that they inch even into here, right? And above T1. But we live in a world where the intangibles, in a lot of cases, are very hard to measure. But the intangibles for a team like T1 and Gen G are extremely easy to measure, because we've seen them at internationals so many damn times. And even though, you know, I think if we isolate Faker as a player, I do think that he does best when he's allowed to rest. His rest period moving into the World Championship, I think that this is where he pops off, right? His rest period coming into spring, this is where he pops off. And I do think that moving into MSI, the time period is relatively solid. I think that they have enough of a time to like breathe and take it easy. So the tightness of spring finishing and then moving to MSI isn't as extreme as it's been in past years. And I think usually that is the biggest indicator for Faker's form as a player. If we think back at T1 and their history of the core of this roster, I think that, you know, their summer splits are always the worst ones. Always the worst ones. Someone asked in the chat when he won MSI last. Faker won MSI 2016, 2017. This was 2017 was with Huni and Peanut and Bang and Wolf. And then they, of course, lost at the World Championship in the finals. 3-0 against Samsung, which was a ruler. I think anyone's legend as a team, like I already talked about T1 and the intangibles, and I think they're going to matter. I think the aura of the names, you know, it's just powerful. You know, we gotta say it for what it is. You know, I have been very rational about my placements. But I think with T1, due to what we know, I think there are certain elements that we can be rational about. But at the same time, I do think T1 come into this tournament as actually a strong team. But I have to also point out that looking at T1 last year, coming into MSI, they also looked pretty damn good. And they couldn't make it happen. So maybe MSI is just cursed for them, because to some degree it has been. When we think about the MSI runs of the Zio GK, MSI has been a rough one for them always. Whether it's Nautilus mid or getting smacked around by Billy 3 times at MSIs, or the COVID high ping one. The MSI runs are low-key cursed. So maybe that's something to consider when it comes to T1 too. That, you know, I do think there's a world where T1 could disappoint. I don't think it's too crazy. Another thing to highlight, I do think in terms of prep, Mata, Tom, the gang, I think they've done a fantastic job. I think it was a big part of their success in, of course, the playoffs. Let me just show you guys their drafts against How Alive. They were vicious, guys. Absolutely tremendous. Look at this. Look at this. So we take a look at this. The opening game, Gwen, Nico, Kalista, denying so many tools over the enemy, opening Vi. I love this gambit. The enemy team probably didn't play Vi for fucking 6 weeks, and it showed. And they did a gambit to make sure that they open up a ban, and they got Gwen and Nico for that price, which I think is brilliant. I think that's brilliant. Obviously, the enemy feels very forced to pick Vi, especially with Poppy out. And you get the Gwen and the Nico, and you find the Jace, and you already removed a lot of the champions that you would consider maybe dangerous in the hands of the enemy top. They get Gwen, Nico, Kalista. They follow up with a Wukong into the Vi after Nocturne and Zhao is out. And the enemy team here, they're set up for bot lane. They just try to pick champions that would make them, of course, be strong. And then on top of that, they take Silas away from Zeka. I think this is a brilliancy. Really, really a brilliancy. There's so much weight that goes into the opening game, because it's kind of like a chess opener in the sense that it sets you up for the rest of the game, right? It puts you in a certain direction. Depending on the research on the enemy team, and maybe you're going to take him into inexperienced waters for him, or you're going to play the lines that are exactly down their wheelhouse. If I compare the Gen G series in comparison to T1 versus How Alive, T1 had much more of a respect against How Alive than Gen G did, because they let the enemy play their line of favorite champs through and through. And someone could tell me, well, Yamato, they won. Maybe this was a strategy. Fair play. Sure. But if you tell me, Gen G being 0-2 down, that this was their plan, I'm going to call you a crazy man. But nevertheless, we continue. T1 in terms of their prep work, the follow-up, enemy first pick Sion. I think at this point, How Alive was too deep into their own head. Rise and Varos is a follow-up, just a strong basis to work on. No more Victor obsession for Faker, which I think is really good. They follow up with Pantheon into Xin Zhao. They pick the Poppy, and the Poppy at this point together with Pantheon is low-key a flex, but not really. I think this is just a good read of understanding what role the Light needs to play on this team, and they are challenging that, right? And I think this was super, super nice too. The Ambassador comes through. They banned Camille because the day before this, of course, Doran had a great Camille game. And then the final game here, we had the Annie first pick, which was a very, very bold one. But in the end, the enemy went middle Lucian down that line, and the Zyra Khan got slammed, and the enemy picked Braum, which was once again a read. Once again, a read, T1's prep work, super damn good. I should do a coach tier list. If I did a coach tier list, bro, Gen G is last place. Bro, Gen G is last place if I do a coach tier list at this event. They are last place. Legit last place. But maybe doing less is what you need to do. Kim hates her? Nah, man. Kim has got my respect. But in terms of their prep work and some of the drafts, the shit that they get away with, is only shit that their players get away with. Trust me. But I talked enough on that. You guys are moving up to the next point. Tabe, speaking of goated coaches and, a clear coaching staff impact, I think that there are certain elements of the game that Anyone's Legend is the best in the world at currently. And that is jungle support, synergy, and early game skirmishing. I think for those who didn't watch LPL, I think Anyone's Legend is like a koi on crack cocaine. Meaning in terms of how busy they are and how they connect with jungle and support, regardless of what champion pairings they play, whether it's Zed Renata, Milio Wukong, or a classic little Pantheon Nautilus, they have a insanely good grasp at how to play together as a support and jungle. I repeat, support and jungle synergy, right? I don't think, even though I think Cannon is the best jungler in the world, Cannon and Duro as a duo, I don't think that they are super insane, right? The same thing about Owner and Keria, even though this year I do think that they have worked a lot on working together. I do think that, Anyone's Legend Super Jungle is just the best at this tournament. I think that Flandre is one of the best weak side players on the server. If you put him in carry matchups, it's going to look worse, but I do think that he plays great in isolation. And I do think that Shanks and Hope are fantastic carries that can fill in the composition depending on what's needed. If I just look plain gameplay without any aura farming, without anything, I do think that Hope has had the best ADC split in spring out of any AD. But we come into this tournament with names like Ruler and Gumayushi, and Hope has been at the internationals in the past, Worlds, and he lost with his JDG at, of course, at Worlds against T1. This was range v range matchups and so forth. This was Hope and Missing before Hope got replaced by Ruler. Hope has had a funny career. He was on EDG, got replaced by Viper. He was on JDG, got replaced by Ruler. And then Anyone's Legend now D1. I don't think currently nobody can replace him. It would be funny if Anyone's Legend Viper comes through. And QXNG, nobody on AL been to MSI other than Tabe. Yeah, none of the players have been on to MSI, but they've been to internationals. Franz, World's winner, and Tarzan. People talk about Tarzan, say that he's an international choker, and the truth is, he hasn't been to that many internationals. He hasn't been to that many internationals. 2019, I think Tarzan at Worlds 2019 was pretty damn good. I don't think it was a problem. I think that the LNG one against T1 was extremely disappointing, but I think people are putting way too much weight into one BO5 where they lost against fucking T1. It needs to go both ways, They lost against T1, Scout, and Tarzan, collapsed. And sure, they played against T1 at this event too, but Tarzan doesn't have that much international experience. He was on Weibo, right? Which I think, once again, he played pretty damn solid. Griffin Tarzan was, the one that I pointed to in 2019. I think Tarzan being branded as an international choker, I think, Tarzan has done enough to earn another chance, I don't think that he's going to come into this tournament and I'm like, oh, Tarzan's going to choke. Someone give him oxygen. Give him oxygen. I think he comes into this tournament, for me, the LPL MVP. I think he's absolutely insane. And I think in terms of team cohesion and everyone understanding the role behind the victory, I do think that this team is really, really good. And another detail to highlight about the LPL is that LPL had a proper fucking playoffs. Look at this bracket. Look at this bracket. Look at this damn bracket. Look at what these teams need to go through to qualify. AL started with 3-0, 3-1, 3-2, 3-1. They had to play 4 best-of-5s to qualify. Some of these other teams, the LCK teams in particular, they're coming off of, a pretty light playoffs. Not light in the sense that there is no intensity, but light in the sense that they didn't get to play too much. Genji got to play 1 and they had to reverse sweep. The fact that there was no final is going to be one of the biggest blunders ever made by a tournament organizer in the history of the game, because it really, really makes me angry to even think about it. But Bilibili as a team, they had to go through the ringer, won 4 BO5, sorry, they lost 2 BO5s, 1-3, right? They beat IG, beat Top Esports, beat IG again, and lost against AL twice. You know, they went through the fire and flames, you know, they went through the fire and flames. And I think that's super helpful. And while most teams and most people are going to say, well, LPL, they just fight stupid, I think definitely fights are more skewed towards that happening. But I think Anyone's Legend is a team that can actually set the pace of the game. They are really, really, really good at setting the pacing of the game. And I think Bilibili are more like, you know, those type of guys that just run at you with a little knife and hope that they win. They are trying to make sure that you don't reload your gun, but if the gun is loaded, you just win, right? That type of shit. But you need to be able to aim, which not a lot of teams are going to be capable of, in my opinion. But Anyone's Legend, I think there's a world that they cause some upsets here. I think there's enough quality there. Certain aspects of the game where I think they are the best in the world at. But I do think that T1 and Gen G are going to operate with a vast more experience, and then a potential, you know, deeper depth, because BO5s can get chaotic. And I do think that some of the magic that Tabe is going to be able to pull is magic that he is only capable of doing once, and this is a double elimination tournament, right? But Anyone's Legend, I think, don't sleep on these guys. I think that this is insanely close, and I repeat, if there was no nameplate, I would say Anyone's Legend have looked like the better team, but nameplates are there, you know. But I suggest Anyone's Legend to disable nameplates when they play against T1, you know. Something about Faker's name in the lobby is going to make your eyes burn. The only person that I've known to aura farm Faker is Wunder, because when we were playing against T1 at Worlds, he said in the client, he said, guys, make sure to play good, don't lose, because the trucks are coming. And he just got question marked by owner and carrier. like angry question marks. Into instant mute Wunder on stage. Anyhow, I think Anyone's Legend can definitely, they are dangerous. They are very dangerous. LPL historically are dangerous at MSI. This is my read, is because between Spring and MSI, the meta barely changes. Barely changes. And there's so many teams that can be good, but at the same time, sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit in the LPL. There are certain metas that LPL teams are going to be insane in, and they're going to be completely awful in different ones. With that being said, Worlds usually, in a lot of cases, send the wrong teams out of the LPL. Outside of the top two, yeah, you send teams that are like, oh, these guys mastered the AD carry mid meta, and now they're at Worlds, and it's been nerfed. Go fuck yourself. You know, that type of beat. Like, oh, Cream is going to Worlds with Top Esports? He's so good at AD carry mids. Oh no, it's nerfed. You know, that type of thing. Next in line, Bilibili. Bilibili, the easiest way to summarize them, if it's the correct decision to fight, I think they can beat everybody. But if it's the incorrect decision for them to fight, they will still beat the majority of teams, but they will not beat the teams above them in the standings here. We're talking about Anyone's Legend. and how insane their coaching staff is and making sure that their drafts are clean and fucking set up for victories. Anyone's legend. If I made a coach's tier list, they are fucking S tier, you know, and T1 is A tier. Billy is lower than Genji when it comes to their prep work. Their prep work is ass. Their read on what their players should be playing is also ass. I think I could join Billy today and I could set them up for more success than whichever coaches are left because some of them got fired. Whether it's Easy Hoon, Big Way, Move Out the Way, like I have a better understanding of your team. You know? Billy, I think Knight is still fucking good. I think everyone is hating on Bin, right? But I think it's exaggerated. Bin, I don't like Bin on Ambessa. I don't like Bin on Rumble. You're gonna pull up his win ratio. Oh, his win ratio is good. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. I'm looking at him in the lobby, and I know the difference between Bin and Bin. You know? I know the difference between, like, the man that was in the conversation for being a GOAT top laner to whatever we see when he's playing champions that I don't think he should be playing. He also doesn't have the guts to slam Jax in games where it's perfectly playable. He's not aura farming. Bin has always been a player that has put in a lot of effort into mastering champs, and then it pays off. With Rumble, I don't think it's paid off. I think Doran Rumble is better. I think Keen Rumble is 10 times better. I don't think this is a conversation. You know, there was a point in time where, you know, Bin Kesante was trash, but then it was like, ooh, Bin Kesante, ooh, he's doing shit I've never seen before. So the main thing for me here, what makes this, you know, Bin unique is that still, when he played Camille in good matchups, Gwen, I think he's 5-0 on Gwen if I remember correctly. Let me pull up Bin. I think he's 5-0 on Gwen, and then it's just permaban against him. Gwendelina 5-0, machine, if you ask me, right? Absolute machine. But then it just gets permabanned. It's permaban. No one's gonna let him play Gwen. No one's gonna let him. But I want him to actually slam Jax. I want him to slam Camille more because this is the opportunity for him to be different. This is the opportunity for him to be different at this event because there was only a school of top laners, right? A school of top laners that can... There's two top laners. Well, I say school, bro. There's barely a cluster. There's two top laners. Zeus and Bin are very, very unique in that they can crack and carry against the best stable top laners. Whether it's 369 at his best or Keen at his best, you know? So I'm hopeful for Bin. I think Knight is still good. I think the bot lane, in terms of lane phase, can be insanely good. I think Beishwan is out of his depth. This team is using Beishwan like the literal definition of a dog jungler is Beishwan. Because he gets told what to do, and then he falls behind, bleeds, and then you see Tarzan just fucking eating chicken, you know? He's ate own chicken, enemy chicken, and then he's just 40 CS ahead, and that's it. Beishwan is not playing the game. He's not. And I don't know who to blame. Because Beishwan, when he was on TT, he was carrying games. He was carrying games. His Lilia was a classic. His Sejuani was pretty damn good. You know, he was a more central point on TT. Obviously, 1xN was by far the best player on that team. 1xN, free of 1xN. Shout out to 1xN. Oh, that's not how you say his name in Chinese, Yamato. I don't care. I don't care. Beishwan is swimming with sharks. I think Inspired, Elioya, better junglers than him. And then Owner, Canyon, Tarzane. Bro, you have a problem in the jungle position. And it's not something you can band-aid. You can't band-aid it. You cannot. You cannot. Beishwan's better than Wei, but Wei, I swear, Wei was going through... He was going through something. Like, he was going through something. His level... Like the Wei is like... Sometimes players play so bad that you think, what the hell is going on there? You know? It's the same like an Umti in hindsight. It's like his gameplay was so off that, you know, in the end, it's like maybe we should have seen it, you know, what's going on there, you know. But my issue for Bilibili is, even though they won one of the best teams in the world last year, at MSI, at Worlds, they made finals. Very impressive team. Very, very impressive team. Bilibili insanely underrated with what they did last year. Nobody talks about how damn good they were last year, right? But Bilibili is very, very good at a very certain style. And in a world where you have Fearless, you can't actually, you know, operate in a world where you are so stylistically reliant on something. Because if you guys remember that game 4 they lost at Worlds against T1, that was a style that they like on draft, they should win. It's completely free. It's so won. The game is so won. But they just couldn't help themselves. They couldn't help themselves. Because that's not who they are. And being defined in this meta is dangerous. Very dangerous. That's why it's so good for T1 that they've actually can play Sion, Yorick, Rumble, and then they can play Ambessa, Gwen, and actually have success. That's a really, really important thing. Very important. Anyone's Legend, the reason I praise them so much is because they can play any jungle support duo that actually makes sense on paper, you know, and make you work and actually deliver. They don't struggle when they play range support with melee jungle. They don't know how to piece it together. They don't lack the idea of how to put vision. Kael is so well-rounded as a player, while Bilibili is like ooga booga. If we are in a draft state where the correct thing for us is to fight, then they can beat anybody. But if it's incorrect, they will lose against Anyone's Legend, T1, Gen G. So Kadru put FlyQuest above Bilibili, and I think that's insanely cope. Because I think the conversation about beating Bilibili, you need to survive. I think Inspired is better than Beishwan. But I think Knight, Bin, Elk, On, what they are going to do in lane phase and opening in games, I think is going to be really fucking hard for FlyQuest to muster themselves through. Then again, FlyQuest is a team that in terms of preparation, they are pretty damn good. They can probably look at Bilibili and recognize if we get to 15 minutes and we have a draft that actually makes sense, we can beat them. What can we concede in draft to actually get us to that point? They are very, very good at this. Very good at this. There's definitely a world where FlyQuest managed to prep in a way that puts them at an advantage against Bilibili because they are predictable. But it's like one of those things, you know? It's like Bilibili against the Western teams, it's kind of like Francis Ngannou, okay? It's like, oh, Francis Ngannou, he's going to charge up and he's going to swing at you, he's going to punch you, and he's going to try to knock you out. And knowing that can be very useful, but sometimes knowing that doesn't mean anything. And then in the best case scenario for Bilibili is that they figure out some things about themselves, right? They figure out some things about themselves, similar to Francis Ngannou. The second time he fought against Stipe Miocic, and Stipe tried to do a takedown, and we saw Francis Ngannou sprawl. I think the whole world was like, Stipe Miocic is about to die. Nevertheless, I think that mechanically, from talent side, I do think that Bilibili has a lot to offer. But Beishwan sucks ass in a pool of junglers that are demonic, and Bilibili is just a bunch of solo queue players being put together. Can they win games against these teams? Yes, they can. Yes, they can. Will they win 3? I doubt it. I really, really doubt it. Knight also very underrated. I think Knight had a very, very good split. He just had bad finals. So many tier lists are like, well, I didn't watch much LPL, but I watched the finals. To be fair, that's me with CFO and Gam and Fury as well. So there it is. Yeah, I already mentioned Bin's champion pool. I think his Yorick is pretty damn good. I don't like his Ambessa, don't like his Rumble. I think his Scion can be good. He has had good games on Scion, but I want him to grow balls and slam jacks in cases where it can be fine. Like in the past, he didn't give a damn, all right? He didn't give a fuck about like the game being bad for jacks. He didn't give a shit. Let me show you. Look at this. This is on paper. Game 5, Bilibili versus T1. I know they lost, but guys, this is like picking. This is the worst jacks game on earth. And he didn't care. He's playing against Poppy, Gragas. Bro, it's the worst. But he's Houdini. Look at this fight. Look at this fight. This is what we want to see from Bin when he Houdini'd it up. Look at him. Look at the Bin is screaming, Lila. Look at this. Look at this. Bin is in the matrix. I'm gonna slow it down for you guys. Just look at Bin. He's in the corner behind the minimap here. Look at this. Look at this. Look at Bin, all right? Look at Bin. Flashes over Poppy ult, Qs the Poppy E, smacks Gumayushi. He's in the Matrix, bro. He's in the Matrix. Wow, this game was so close. How crazy is that, bro? World Finals. What a brilliant finals. Nevertheless, let's pull it up again. All right. I think we covered the top 4. I think the upside of anyone's legend cannot be understated. It really, really can't be understated. And I think the difference, I have to say, I probably would do this rather than S. You know? I think the distance isn't that far. Genji is clear favorite. They should win this damn tournament. But I think there's opportunities for T1 and AO, you know? Flandre Champu might be get hit on carries. Yeah, it's like Flandre, if you take a look at the games in the LPL finals, the games that he's losing, I think it might have been in the first series. Let me show you guys here. AL versus Bilibili. So AL versus Bilibili. There was this game where I'm watching it live and I'm slamming my whole, you know, every bullet in the world here. It's like anyone's legend picked Ambessa 1-2. You invite Bin Camille, they got completely ass blasted. They got exploded. They got exploded. Completely exploded. But okay. Let's carry on. I think putting FlyQuest above Bilibili is ridiculous. I don't think FlyQuest has looked that clean, by the way. I don't think they've looked that clean. I don't think they've looked so clean. I think FlyQuest, I haven't decided yet who I'm going to put first. FlyQuest has not had, they haven't had like a good split by their standard. In my opinion. I think that Busio is inconsistent, right? And I think that there was qualities about C9 that I appreciated. FlyQuest don't have the same level of discipline like they've had in previous years. Well, previous split, like in summer last year, right? I think they looked a lot better in summer. I think like last year. I think they look a lot better at Worlds. Obviously, the conversation of, you know, Fearless being there and everyone looks a little bit worse obviously matters. But I don't think they come into this tournament as with insane form. I don't think so. I don't agree with this sentiment that people have that FlyQuest is above and beyond the best Western team. I think there are game states where FlyQuest, in terms of early skirmishing, actually are terrible. Their early skirmishes are not good. Their fight selections in early game is not good. I think Inspired comes into this tournament as the best Western player. I think I can say that without a doubt. But I have to say, Whippo, Busio, inconsistent. Masu, pretty damn consistent, very solid, but Quad also inconsistent. I think the main thing that I can say, which I agree on the conversation of FlyQuest, is that I think that FlyQuest, in terms of high-level macro decisions, meaning certain decisions they make within the game to gain gold or to gain position, I think is S+ level. But the consistency of that, I don't think is there right now. I don't think it's there right now. I think the biggest strength of this team is that they have a wide range of champion availability, which I think is really, really important. But I am worried about their early game consistency. I am worried about their skirmishing. And I think that they're not going to get away with what they got away with in the LTA. This team dropped games against pretty terrible teams. And I think in a different world, C9 would be here right now. What did C9 utilize? What did C9 utilize against them? I do think a big part of that was the early game skirmishing. The way they track numbers, the way they choose fights, I think it's extremely wonky. And I think FlyQuest is going to get massacred if they don't tighten that up. Once again, I repeat, in terms of like prep, I think FlyQuest, their biggest strength, I think in that World Championship in particular, when they had a pretty decent run and took Genji to 5 games, is that they could mold themselves to opponents. That's a very good thing to be able to do as a range. But I have to say, maybe this is crazy, but I put Koi above Fly. I don't buy the Fly hype. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Once again, if I'm going to play, you know, the devil's advocate against my position, I think in terms of high-level macro and Inspired's level of play is really, really good. Masu, really, really insane. But I think there's an inconsistency there that makes me scared. Mad Lions, in the context, like if I put up FlyQuest, it's weird because I can definitely see a world where I think that FlyQuest could do better against the top 4, but I think that Koi would beat Fly. So how do I rate it? How do I rate it if that's my take? I think FlyQuest, higher chance of upsetting teams above them, but I think Koi beats them. On the other side, you know, why I am considering Koi here is I think their jungle support synergy is really, really insane. Really, really good. I think their early game planning is really, really solid. I think that in terms of team cohesion, I think they're up there amongst the best. When I say team cohesion is like the buy-in from everybody with the decisions that are made in the game. And I think they actually have structured enough mid to late games now that they can actually carry over leads. I think in terms of setting leads on, I do think that Koi as a team, what Alvario and Elioya do is extremely high level. My main concern when it comes to Koi is that, like, if they are laning against some of these guys above them, are they just gonna get smoked? Are they just gonna be cooked? You know? That's why I think that Koi individually, I think they're good enough to beat FlyQuest with the details that I mentioned. But I do think that FlyQuest has more to offer against some of the teams above them. And I have repeated this time and time again, but I think I'm going to just leave Koi here. And I think that Koi, we mentioned their laning. At the same time, bro, like Alvaro and Super have been playing good. Georgia had a pretty fucking good ramp up, you know? I think that Georgia is more in tune with the game. I think that's always the thing that was missing for me, that Georgia just lost track of the game. It was so easy to like disrupt his lane phase because he was just too greedy. People are talking about Koi choking and the history of Koi choking. Bro, last year, they didn't choke. Last year, they were just ass. Last year, the way they qualified to Worlds was a complete joke. They beat G2 with what? They ended the year with a sub 40% win ratio. And they qualified to the World Championship. They were not a good team. They didn't choke. And if you look at past competition, it has nothing to do with this team. Unless you think Elioya is a choker. But Elioya has played brilliantly. He has played really, really well at online, like offline competition internationally. I wouldn't put the pains of I wouldn't put the pains of past Mad Lions, MSI runs, and whatever. Like the only thing that is left there is Elioyo. Georgia has been okay internationally. I think he's been all right. You know, he's been okay. Big thing for me still is that, bro, Nuktak and Mithi, and knowing, like, even though I don't think Bwipo has been playing well, Bwipo knows how to get good. He knows how to get good. So there's a world where I can definitely see Flag was going above, you know? But based on what we saw in spring, just based off of like gameplay, I think Koi is better. I don't know, next in line, you know, the strange thing is, bro, like all the people that watch LCP, they convinced me, bro. The way they hype CFO, they convinced me to go back and watch more CFO. And CFO as a team, I think they have some really, really good individuals. I think Kaiwing as a support is one-dimensional as fuck, which can be a problem. Very one-dimensional. Junjia, fantastic jungler. Dogo, really, really good. Honkyu is gonna be poached and he's gonna play in LPL. Kaiwing is basically Ming. You guys remember that best of 5? They played against KC at first stand. Let me show you. Let me show you something, because it's kind of funny. Let me show you something. Game 5, Yumi. 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 Hoppa. Kaiwing is a very, very old support, bro. Very old support. I think him playing range supports is not the greatest, you know? I think that the range of play that they have comes from mid lane, jungle, and their 2 top laners. The 2 top lane thing, it's quite sporadic, but basically the thread that they follow is that it's largely dependent on what they want to play jungle. When they play less engage in jungle, they put in the tank top laner in driver. When they play supportive champions in jungle, they are putting rest plays Jace, Gwen, all that jazz, Yorick, Mori. Main thing for me with CFO, they kind of got that Genji energy to them, you know? The bad sides of the Genji energy is that I think they get away with a lot of bullshit regionally. I'm going through their games and they are getting away with a lot of bullshit. Meaning they arrive late to the party, nobody punish them, they don't need to put money in the jar, they still win the fight because they just are better. They're just a little bit too good domestically, in my opinion. Even though they got pushed to 5 games, right? They got pushed to 5 games. But I think they got pushed to 5 games for the wrong reasons. I don't think that they got... I don't think that they are getting pushed because the enemy is good. I think they are getting pushed because they allow it to happen in a weird way. I think Honkyu is really fucking insane. Really, really insane. I am so certain the LPL is gonna throw fucking money bags on him, bro. Money bags. Honkyu is the future. Junjia is the king of this region, 100%. Dogo is really good. My concerns about CFO is that their setups are inconsistent, low champion pool in bot lane, and I think this can be a problem. And then I've heard the claim many times that CFO gets a scrim against LPL teams and LCK, and I don't know how true this is. I really don't know how true it is, but I thought I'd throw that out there. Another thing that I can point out as well is that Coach Kim says they were completely overwhelmed both in macro and team fights and scrims against AL. And then AL came out I closed it, but AL came out and said that this interview is untrue. These three teams, I think they have very, very different upsides, and I think it's just a question of flavors, you know? I think that FlyQuest can do better, can do good against... They have like a higher potential ceiling due to prep work and some of the individual players. Like Whippo, Masu, inspired at their best, can play and hang with some of the best, right? That's fucking important. But I do think the lack of structure in the early game, lack of discipline as well, I think is a boon. CFO, mentioned already, bot lane champion pool issues and all that jazz. I think Koi, in terms of cohesion, we need to morph the strengths of these three teams together to make them compete against the top three. But I think if you have these three teams in any order, I think everything is passable. But I would still say that I do think that FlyQuest is quite overrated coming into this tournament. I think they're quite overrated. And that's probably like the main point that I wanted to hammer home about B tier. I think Furia and Gam belong here. I watch a little bit of Furia, a little bit of Gam. I think Gam is LPL, honestly. They are LPL. They love Nocturne for some reason. They are, when people think LPL, when they don't watch LPL, that's what Gam is, in my opinion. And then we have sweet G2. Sweet G2, guys. Sweet G2. I cannot in good conscience put them on the same rank as CFO, Koi, and FlyQuest. I can't. Their biggest problem, in my opinion, if you look at how Skymond played and Labrov played in both finals that they got 3-0'd in, they are not playing the game. People gonna tell me, well, Caps ran into a Leona. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But Caps is experienced enough to know when his teammates are shitting their pants. And he tries to win the game, no matter how ugly it looks. I think BB is in the same boat. So the copium is that there is some substance to G2's play, because in that first Koi series, the big thing that stood out was that Labrov and Skymond actually worked together and found timers. And BB and Caps actually played side lane together and did it really well. But if I look at the full picture of what G2 is not a Caps-centric team. And this will haunt them forever. All the years that Caps has been in this team, the 2 times rosters have been built where he doesn't become the focal point, it falls apart. Caps is not perfect in every way. But if you make the game about Caps, he is the best player in the West to win games. But he's not going to be a good player when he is not the central point of the game. That's not his strength. He is not a passenger. He says, I'm going to take the wheel. When you say Jesus take the wheel, you're hoping that Caps shows up. Labrov as a player has had a history of choking. If you just isolate Labrov's last games of every season he's ever played, he's up there. If you just look at those games, whether it's the best of 5 that they got reverse swept against Mad Lions, whether it's the best of 5 they lost against us, whether it's some of those series against G2, where he just got completely read like a book, where if you look at the finals, back-to-back on G2, this is, I say this so carefully with most players, but he is a choker to the max. To the max. He had some good regular season games and so forth. Sure. But none of that matters. You're fucking playing in MSI now, man. You're playing at MSI, brother. And I have so much doubts. Skymond, rookie. That's okay. But you are going into the shark den, bro. And you are finding Nemo. You are very good at carrying games when you get ahead. But you ain't getting ahead for free against these big dogs. You walk into the, you walk into the sauna. All the other junglers there already in the sauna. They are swinging their meat. Canyon, Owner, Tarzan, Elioya, Inspired, Junjia, Levi, Beishon, Skymon. It's a little bit too early. And I feel bad for the guy. I feel bad for the guy. I feel bad for Beishon too. Because their first international experience happens to be the most stacked jungle tournament of all time. This is the most stacked jungle tournament of all time. And I think G2 is going to get cooked. The only upside is Caps, BB, great international performers, right? G2, good prep team. Maybe they can make something happen, but I think there's too many holes to plug. And just because this ain't a cap-centric team, it has become a Hansama Labrov team and Skymon team, and they have too little of range of play. Too little range of play. Way too little range of play. They don't get ahead early, they lose. If they get ahead, they know how to play structured games, but if someone finds like a sneaky right hook or something, they lose all track of the game. And that ain't the way, man. That ain't the way. Even though Fnatic lost to them, Fnatic completely fisted them in the first 15 minutes of the game. And they were lucky that Fnatic are just ass as the game continues. Very lucky, you know? And I've said this, ever since the roster move was announced, G2, you might do fine in the splits. You might do okay in the splits. But when you get to internationals, you will actually realize how fucking important Mickey has been for your international bids. And for all the people that clown on me for putting Mickey so fucking high, look at his international performances. And tell me he wasn't fucking insane for this team. Whether it was them taking T1 to 5 games, where he completely annihilated Keria and Gumayushi on his Papushka. Or even at Worlds, when G2 somehow found ways to be competitive against T1 that tournament. I think, you remember when the steal happened, the steal, the steal, you remember, and the 3 inhibits down and whatever. Mickey did so much, guys. He did so damn much. It's ridiculous how much he did. Mickey, it's like, I get it if the community, underrates Mickey, but let me show you guys, bro, against Billy, bro. Bro. Let me show you this, guys. So good. And then the Nocturne comes through. Caps is getting collapsed on. And look at this sneaky beaky. Because Mickey is the type of player who says, yo, this Zeri has cleanse, okay? In fucking 20 seconds. If I don't find a play in the next fucking 3 minutes where Zeri has no cleanse, our Nexus explodes. And that's the type of player that Mickey is. There's very few players that are like this. Very few. Very few. They didn't win this series, right? They didn't win this series. But this type of shit is genius. I will take Mickey at an international any day of the week for every year for the rest of time of League of Legends history. I will take Mickey over Labrov. But I will take Mickey over almost any support besides Prime Hilly. And guys, I'm repeating, I said this shit at the beginning of the year, that you're gonna go to your worlds and you are sad that you didn't make it out of groups and you're going to regret it, G2. You're gonna regret it. The last time you lost Mickey, you regretted it and you brought him back. and then you started winning again. And then you got rid of Mickey for God knows why. Well, I do know why, but it's not my story to tell. They didn't make it out with Mickey either. I love Mickey. You know, they lost to NRG, and that was terrible for sure. But I think they were just really, they were not that good at that Worlds. Last year at Worlds, they were insane. Last year at Worlds, they were really good. Last year at Worlds, they were one of the best Western teams of all time. Like, not even capping. Obviously, there's not that many great Western teams of all time. It's like you have 2018 Fnatic, you have 2015 Fnatic, you have... We're not going to go back to, oh, but Moscow 5 and CUGEU. We're not going that far back. Okay. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. We're not going that far back. Weren't even the best Western team at the tournament. I think that's maybe a hot take, but I think that G2 would beat FlyQuest at this tournament.